Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani here. Today we're going to be doing a video on insulin resistance diet and exercise. We're going to go into the depths of how to use these to help improve your health and body composition. Before we do, make sure you smash that like button. Really appreciate it. Give me a thumbs up. Put your comments down below. Let me know things you've done to help improve your body composition and health. Really curious, and make sure you share this with a friend as well. All right, so let's dive in. Insulin resistance is a hallmark behind inflammation, right? Insulin resistance is when your cells become numb to insulin. Insulin is what's produced primarily when you eat carbohydrates, some protein, but much more carbohydrate. The more processed and the refined the carbohydrate, the more insulin you make. The more you secrete insulin, the more the cells become numb to it. Insulin is a hormone that helps partition fuel. It's a storage hormone. So the more of it you make and the more resistant you become, it will shunt glucose into the muscle to get formed as glycogen, or in the liver as glycogen. And then it will also, once those stores are tapped and fully empty, or I should say full, they can't put any more in it, it'll start converting that glucose into fat. So think of it as insulin, think of fuel coming in. It goes on the storage side where it goes either to glycogen, which is stored carbohydrate, either in the liver, about 60 to 80 grams in the liver, 300 to 400 grams in the muscle area, and then the rest starts getting shunted into fat. And that's important because if we're not active, what it does is it decreases our ability to have bufferage, right? Buffer in regards to our being able to burn carbohydrates adequately and store it as fat. So think of it as like this. Once those fuel sources, once those storage areas are tapped, right, they're full, and we can no longer convert that glucose into carbohydrate or into stored glucose, stored glycogen, right? It has to get converted to fat. Now, what exercise does is imagine each of those storage sites is like a sponge, right? You store all that glucose as glycogen in these various sponges, muscle, liver. When you exercise, it's like wringing out that sponge and emptying it out. And so what it does is now you have this relatively dry sponge that can go soak up more glucose again. So it's wringing out these sponges called your muscles, which then gives you more glucose buffering. So if you have the ability to buffer glucose, meaning absorb it, pull it out of the bloodstream, it's less likely your body's going to start partitioning fuel into fat. So ideally, there's two kind of ways to do it. We keep insulin low, and that allows our body to be more in fat burning mode. That's number one. Number two, if insulin comes in, we want to have a reservoir called muscle to be able to buffer the glucose that's coming, or fructose that's coming in along with it. Now, the problem with glucose versus fructose is fructose primarily gets stored in the liver. What's the problem with that? Liver is a lot, let's say, less storage area, right? 60 to 80 grams or so in the liver area, where the muscle is about 5 or times that. So the problem with fructose is you don't quite have the ability to buffer that like you do with glucose. This is why keeping fructose down and keeping high fructose things down is really important. And this is why exercise is super important, because if your diet is perfect and you get a little, let's say you don't move that much, you can probably get by, right? The problem is if you don't lose it, if you don't use it, you lose it. So your muscle mass over time goes lower and lower, and your ability to buffer glucose and fructose goes down. And so by having good muscle mass and burning that up and exercising, you're going to be able to clear out the glucose reserves or fructose reserves in the liver and the muscle, which is basically wringing out that sponge, giving you some fresh, dry sponges to soak that up. Now, if your diet's perfect and you're on track, you can probably get by. What exercise is going to do, it's going to give you that little bit of buffering, wring out those sponges, so you can absorb more of it. That's really the benefit. And of course, exercise keeps your muscles stimulated. Your muscles being more stimulated, they're going to grow. It's going to increase its capacity. And of course, EPOC, or exercise post-oxygen consumption, keeps your metabolism up 1 to 2 days after a high-intensity exercise workout. So then it keeps your metabolism up a little bit higher, and it will keep kind of burning up that glucose or fructose as it comes in. So that's kind of the big benefit of exercise, right? Now, 80% of it, in my opinion, is going to be all on the diet. Because if you're consuming a whole bunch of crap all the time and it's inflammatory, guess what? There's not too much exercise is going to do unless you're doing it around the clock, okay? Especially as you get older, you can only do so much with exercise. But if your diet's relatively good and you're having issues, exercise does give you that little bit of buffer room, especially if you do interval training or you do any kind of circuit training or resistance training that's going to build up your muscle reserves and help increase your metabolism. So think of exercise as wringing out the sponges, okay? You have high intensity movements where you're doing some kind of a high intense movement, whether it's a sprint or a row or an elliptical, really fast for 10, 20, 30 seconds. You're resting. Those are excellent because you're going high to low, high to low. That increases your metabolism, and that causes that whole EPOC phenomenon I mentioned, right? Exercise post-oxygen consumption, which increases your metabolism. And of course, resistance training is good, even simple bodybuilding stuff, because if you're doing good compound movements, compound means multiple joints are moving at the same time, right? So like a bodybuilding movement that's non-compound is like a bicep curl, right? That's bicep curl, one joint, right? Elbow. If I do a kettlebell swing, right, that's multiple joints, shoulder, hip, knees, back, all at the same time. So compound movements, kettlebell swings, lunges, movements that involve a lot more stability of the whole trunk are going to be compound and much better for you. Get more muscle involved, a lot more of the stabilizers involved too. And of course, look at your diet. Anti-inflammatory, nutrient-dense, low toxin, carbs matter. Dial in your macronutrients. Inflammation matters. The more inflamed your food is, the more pro-inflammatory it is, right? Junky omega-6 fats, lots of refined processed carbohydrates, a lot of artificial flavors, colors, dyes, preservatives, pesticides, hormones, right? These aren't good things. These are going to create more inflammation in your body. Inflammation will promote more cortisol release. Cortisol release will promote more sugar, glucose release, okay? And then your body has to either use that glucose or store it again as fat, right? Because cortisol will rip up muscle and convert it to glucose. That's how it works. It's called, you have gluconeogenesis, which is releasing glucose from the liver. And then cortisol can also break down amino acids into glucose as well. So I hope that made sense, guys. So with insulin resistance, we have diet is always going to be the best strategy. If you're plateauing, look at exercise. And also, don't overlook getting steps, right? I got my little Fitbit here in my pocket. It's actually being charged as we walk right here. So it's going. I have my little battery charger to keep it going. So it's my little trick. If you want to charge your Fitbit and not lose steps, right? You plug it into a portable battery charger, put it in your mouth or your pocket, or I put it in my sock, or I wrap it around one of these things, tuck it in here, wrap it around my ankle like that. And that way, if I'm pedaling on my bike, I can still get my steps that way. So spontaneous movement like that, 10,000 plus steps a day makes a huge difference. And then try to do little micro workouts. If you don't have time to work out, get a kettlebell in your office. Get a TRX in your office. Get a push-up bar in your office. Do some simple movements that are going to allow your whole body to get activated. Hope that helps. And of course, other nutrients that can be used on top of that. We can use cinnamon, alpha lipoic acid, gymnema. We can use inositol. We can use B vitamins. All these help with insulin resistance as well. Magnesium too. If you're struggling with insulin resistance, or you want to dive in deeper and look at what the metabolic barriers to your weight loss could be, feel free to click down below to reach out to myself and colleagues. I'm available to help y'all all over the U.S. and the world. Let me open it up for questions for you guys. See what kind of questions you have. When I crave chocolate, Let me see here. When I crave chocolate, am I craving the sugar or the phenylethylamine? So, it depends, right? What kind of chocolate are you consuming? When I consume chocolate, it's 85 to 90% dark chocolate. And just an FYI, if you go to 73% to 85%, there's like a 60 to 80% reduction in sugar content. People think, well, I'm only going from 73 to 85. What? That's only a 12%. Well, I'm telling you, there's about a 70 to 80% reduction when you go from 73 to 85. So try to consume at least mid 80s to 90. Somewhere in the 80s to 90 is a really good place to be. That way it keeps the sugar content down. And there's a lot of magnesium in chocolate, so you could also be craving the magnesium as well. Can polyps and other damaged tissue go away with fasting? It's possible. A lot of polyps can grow with high levels of inflammation and insulin, so it's definitely possible. Excellent. Great to have you here, Mike. Do lower carbs and a little intermittent fasting. Notice something. Of course, just to highlight, guys, intermittent fasting can be very helpful in this whole process of insulin resistance. I like it. If you have a damaged metabolism and your body's not used to getting nutrients in, or you're having a lot of junky carbohydrates, don't worry about intermittent fasting out of the gates. Work on getting steady nutrition in your body and keeping the carbs down and have good fats. Do that first, and then once your body gets used to having adequate nutrients, then you can compress that feeding window and have longer gaps between your dinner and your first meal of the day, which will help more with insulin resistance. But don't worry about it. If your diet's crappy enough, just go to the next level of changing it and still giving yourself enough food throughout the day. I hope that helps. So do a little carb and little IF. Notice sometimes a few bites into breaking my fast, I feel super nauseous and I have to wait a few minutes to continue eating. Any idea what that is? You may be having a hard time dealing with the fat and protein. You may need more HCl or enzymes. That could be a possibility. And you may have some gut issues you got to look at. I'm currently dealing with digestion issues for fat deposits around the liver, gut, dehydration levels, fatigue, and looking for help from a fundamental medicine doctor, maybe like yourself. Yeah, so when you have issues with fatty liver deposits, that's basically insulin resistance. Kind of like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, we talked about glucose and fructose kind of partitioning storage sources, right, in the muscle and the liver. And of course, when you start to overstore glucose or fructose, primarily fructose in the liver, that's what's going to happen. You're going to get a fatty liver, and you'll see an elevation in liver enzymes too. So getting the insulin down, doing some movement, that will hopefully wring out that liver, so to speak, so you can burn up that glucose. That should help and make a big difference. Yeah, and if you want to reach out to myself, click down below, justinhealth.com, and you can click there to work with me. Do you think any of the food sensitivity tests are accurate? Some are. There's some decent ones that are out there. I'm not a huge fan of it because when you have gut permeability and gut inflammation issues, you're going to be developing allergies to everything all the time. So cut out the most common ones based on what we know to be true, based on an autoimmune template, and then have some modified rotation so you're not eating the same things all the time. What I eat to heal my gut, digestion issues, and hydration levels, prevent aging, fat deposits. Yeah, so out of the gates, you'd probably want to start with some kind of a paleo template, maybe a autoimmune low-carb paleo template out of the gates, but I'd have to chat with you, Mike, to get more specific. How long does it take to see results after starting keto and really doing it right? It depends. If you're really insulin resistant, maybe 2 to 4 weeks. The big mistakes people make is they tend to eat too much protein, so make sure you're eating a decent bit of protein, 20, 25% is fine. I think the problem comes from if you're doing a lot of extra lean meats or a lot of extra protein shakes. Again, if you exercise, that'll buffer some of that out because you'll use more of that protein up in your workouts, so that's okay too, and use it in repair. And then I would say outside of that is just really making sure you get enough good green vegetables and maybe get enough minerals, potassium, magnesium. That can be a problem as well. Could you provide a rough estimate how long it can take, best case, for a pre-diabetic to totally reverse insulin resistance by maintaining the body ketosis via diet and intermittent fasting? I would say 1 to 2 months, depending on how severe they are. And it also depends upon how damaged their pancreas is, right? The beta cells of the pancreas are what produces insulin. If it's just purely an insulin resistance thing and we're having to try to get our cells more sensitive to it, I mentioned a lot of B vitamins, inositol, myo-inositol, alpha-lipoic acid, gymnema, cinnamon, bitter melon. All these things are really helpful with supporting that insulin resistance, right? But then, of course, if the beta cells are damaged and we don't have enough insulin, that's a different story. But yeah, definitely getting more ketogenic. You can get like a ketone meter like I have over here, the Keto Mojo, and you can test and try to get your millimoles of ketones up closer to 1, which is ideal. And then try to get some movement in there because that movement will also help wring out the muscles. The muscles will be able to soak up more glucose, and that will also help with insulin resistance. Your muscles have these little GLUT4 receptors that help pull glucose in, and the more you build those muscles, the more of those GLUT4 receptors you have, and that can help bring that insulin into the muscle. So good resistance training and good exercise is going to be very helpful, especially resistance. What's a good way to know if 2 cups of berries a day is too much fructose for you? Well, it depends. I mean, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries only have about 4 grams of glucose per cup, so it's not too bad. Usually, if you have severe insulin resistance, you want to keep it under 15 to 25 grams a day, according to Dr. Richard Johnson out of University of Colorado. So, I mean, that's like 2 cups of a good clean berry, organic berries a day are probably going to be okay. If you know you're insulin resistant, then I would just do 0 fruit and just focus on lots of non-starchy green vegetables, non-starchy veg out of the gates for the first month, and then maybe try afterwards. But you can follow my functional glucose tolerance testing guide. I've talked about that in previous videos, so just look at videos that I've done where I talk about how to measure glucose levels. I think I just use the keyword on the website, justinhealth.com, functional glucose testing or functional glucose tolerance. Okay. Would using DHEA transdermally be good for the third R if needed? I mean, I typically would do it sublingually versus transdermally, but yes, DHEA is a very important building block, especially if your adrenals are really beat up. What causes my gas and indigestion when I'm feeling nauseous from the food I chew and the lack of water hydration in my body? Well, first thing is don't hydrate around food. Hydrate 15 minutes before or 2 hours after. Number two, you don't have enough enzymes and acids to break those foods down. Therefore, they're sitting in your tummy. It's like having a trash can full of trash and leaving it in your garage and not taking it out to the curb. Eventually, it gets stinky in the garage, right? And that'll eventually come into your house. Same thing. So you got to work on the digestion, and you got to figure out why that is the case. Stress, gut infections, of course, all play a role in low enzyme, low acid, and low bile salt levels. Great question. Have you ever seen a case where an SSRI affected insulin sensitivity? Why do you think this could, what do you think could help with this? Well, we know SSRIs have weight gain as a side effect, right? And so it's possible that SSRIs could cause more weight gain. I've seen it. Birth control pills are the same way. What the mechanism is, don't know. It could be affecting, SSRIs affect hormones, right? They cause lower libido, right? So they definitely have an effect on androgen levels. They definitely have an effect on female hormones. We know birth control pills also cause weight gain as well. So I'm not sure the exact mechanism. Also, SSRIs could create more cravings as well. So possibly your diet's more junky when you're on it too. I don't know the exact mechanism, but I know weight gain is a common side effect, and it's definitely having an effect on insulin resistance. So of course, you really don't want to be on SSRIs long term. You want to transition to natural herbs and amino acids and essential fatty acids and a good diet and good anti-inflammatory support for the brain, so you don't need those things. But again, if it's an acute issue where it's either that or something life-threatening can happen, you know, do what you got to do and then try to get off that and work with a natural person that can help you. How do we know if our liver is functioning properly and when it needs to be detoxified? Well, great question. I would say everyone should utilize some level of detoxification support. I take a little bit of glutathione and NAC every day because we live in a toxic world. Now I have really good Austin air filtration. I have whole house water filters. I have a reverse osmosis water filter. So my water is as clean as you can get it. My air is as clean as you can get it. I don't use any crap on my, no dryer sheets, no junky stuff on my laundry. My pool water has super, super low levels of chlorine. So I try to mitigate all my toxic levels as much as possible, but I still use a little bit of amino acids and a little bit of my detox aminos to help support my liver. I think supporting your body via detoxification, for 1 or 2 months out of the year is helpful. Remember though, outside of supplements, remember, just getting enough water, right? Good clean water. Solution to pollution is dilution. A little bit of sweating, right? Eating really clean organic food, digesting and absorbing all of the nutrients in the sulfur amino acids in your vegetables and in your animal products. All of those help. All of those make a big difference in detoxifying. Now, if you want to use supplements outside of that, I think that's smart. And you could do it punctuated 1 to 2 month fashion, maybe once a year. What we'll do is we'll test organic acids and we'll look at pyroglutamate and sulfate and alpha hydroxybutyrate and whole blood cell glutathione. And that can be also helpful to know if there's issues there as well in regards to detoxification. So we'll use those markers on top of that. Is it safe to take supplements while on a liquid-only diet? It depends. As long as they're good quality and they break down and they aren't making you nauseous, that's fine. If not, you could always do an elemental formula, which would be in a powder form and be broken down super easy. This morning I woke up with constipation. What does this mean? How do I fix it? Yeah, so you need to go to the 6 R's, Mike. So reach out to me. You got to go through all the 6 R's. Remove the bad foods, replace the enzymes and acids, repair the gut lining, remove the bad foods, replace the enzymes and acids, repair the gut lining and the hormones, remove the infection, repopulate, reinoculate good bacteria, retest. You got to go through the whole protocol. There's not just like a one-off thing to do there. All right, hope that helps, guys. Hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, let me know. Give me a thumbs up right now. Give me a comment. Let me know what you like about it, what your favorite part is. And any ideas, future topics, please let me know. And if you want to reach out to moi, feel free to reach out down below. You'll see